I'm delighted to see Barnet come back into the Football League after 7 years away. And I'm especially excited to see this team come up because when they won the National League title under Martin Allen in 2015, it was very much a long ball side going to John Akinde, and a very direct team that was very competitive and hardworking, but didn't necessarily bring much of the wow factor. Whereas I've watched some clips of this Barnet team, sort of studying them, ready for this podcast, and already I get the feeling that I'm going to enjoy watching them. They play some great football. They play some possession football for sure, but they also play at a really high intensity, and that's one thing that I'm very excited about under a manager in Dean Brennan who's extremely passionate, and a group of players who most of them haven't really tasted the football league before. So how they're going to step up, I think, is a question mark. How their style and system and approach to football is going to translate to the higher level, still a big question mark. But I think they'll be exciting next season, one way or another. So plenty to get stuck into then on this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. This is part of a series of summer deep dives where I'm speaking to a fan of each of the 72 EFL clubs between mid-June and mid-July. So if you want to get stuck into more of that stuff, you can get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would help us out a lot. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by Mem from the BeesPod. Mem, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. You must be buzzing as a Bees fan at the moment with the achievement of last season, getting into 102 points, and the football that's on display.
Yeah, no, definitely. Who couldn't enjoy a game? Who couldn't join a 100+ point season with lots of swashbuckling football and attack. So it still seems a blur. I kind of miss the feeling of the games coming up, and the anticipation. It's kind of like let's get through this summer. Come on, quick! I want the season to start again. I can't wait for us to start. I can't wait for us to get back into the EFL. So it's looking really exciting. Really exciting.
Yeah, I think we'll have to start with Dean Brennan because he's clearly a manager who wears his heart on his sleeve, and is somebody who really wants to build a real connection with fans. And sometimes that's involved with sort of praising them and sort of building that kind of connection that way. But he's also not been afraid to really say what he thinks when it might be controversial as well. And I think it seems to me that Barnet fans kind of admire that side of him just as much.
Yeah, Dean has been a breath of fresh air since he's been at the club. I would say that he's been very open. He says what he thinks. And that anything he says on the camera, he'll have spoken to the players about. From a supporter's perspective, he opened a door to BeesPod very early on. We now have like a regular summer interview with him where we talk about new signings, the season ahead. We do a bit of a review, but mainly we look forward with the summer interview, the summer podcast we do. And it's really great because what he does is he likes to show us under the bonnet. So
under the Barnet.
Sorry, say again.
Under the Barnet.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. He's been brilliant. He's been very open. It's all about togetherness. All the management team actually have been very like close to the fans. They do things like they play five-a-side games against fans and stuff. They invite the fans in, and you can come in and hang out with them, and it's just like such a buzz around the Hive at the moment. It's pun intended, and it's just this. Everybody is on the same page, from the people in the office to the people out and about, out in the sort of working in the stadium, to people in the changing rooms. Everybody is on message, and I've never known it to be this united at Barnet. We've had some terrible times in recent seasons, and this has been the most united, and it just shows the success on the pitch now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that because I think when you went down from in 2018. I would have probably guessed, Mem, that in order for Barnet to reach the point that you're describing, that it probably would have taken a change of ownership, because Tony Cleanthouse seemed to have been actually quite a controversial figure at Barnet, who sort of divided opinion, I guess, in recent time, in sort of at the back end of your last stay in the Football League. Do you think that's changed? What is the sort of supporter perception of the ownership situation right now?
Well, yeah, no, it has changed. And actually, I would, if you wanted to get a real idea of how low things got, I would suggest you dig out the BeesPod interview we did with Tony Kilianthos, because he talks about with us that he lost his passion for football, and for him it was like it just got on top of him, and I think he just took his eye off the ball with it for a number of. Bear me a second. I'm having some technical issues.
Of course.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. I don't know what happened there. One sec.
No problem. Yeah, I think from my point of view, I'm excited to see how the ownership situation at Barnet can. I'm excited to see Barnet fans a bit more galvanised under the current ownership regime, and I'm curious to hear how things have evolved. Mem, are you there?
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry, I had a bit of a technical issue with my camera.
Okay.
So going back to my point. So this was pre-COVID, and even during COVID, he did everything to keep the club with it in the black. And I think Dean has changed him, and I think that the fact that Dean has come in, and Dean is really good at managing up, and I think he has managed to give Tony Cleanthos his hunger back, for football. And I think it's not just the success. I think it's just the way that Dean operates with Tony. And I think that they have a very open relationship. And from what I understand, occasionally it can be a little bit, they can butt heads, but they respect each other. And I think that's the key, is that because they both respect each other, and Tony sees a guy who is very competent and understands the value of his money. I think that Tony has really bought into it as well. And I feel that, again, it goes back to Dean Brennan's influence. He has come in and he's brought everybody together, not just the fans. He's brought the chairman with him as well. And now the chairman has gone from, I think, looking over his shoulder, thinking, "Oh, what am I going to do? When I retire, I'm not getting any younger." To, I think he's got his buzz back. And he's really he's engaged now, and you can tell as well with, like, last season, for instance. He upped the budget for the team. We still didn't have a budget like everybody else, but he upped the budget so that we could compete. And Dean has basically spent his money really well. If there is a better recruiter in lower league than Dean Brennan, I don't know it. He finds the value. He is like the Moneyball guy. Knows those players that are, unloved. Those players that have maybe failed somewhere, but he looks and he goes, "That player can play in my system, and that player is not a failure. That player can play." And I'll give you an example. For instance, Mark Shelton. If you saw the comments of opposite, like Oldham fans, after when they were laughing and they thought, "What, you think you're going to do something with Mark Shelton? He's rubbish." And I tell you what, he was one of our top goal scorers. Towards the end of the season, he really stepped up. He scored some really high pressure penalties, and he was a true success. Yeah, if you'd listened to the fans of the other teams, you thought we'd bought a dud. And he's done it with other players, where he's picks up Liam Love from non-league South.
Yeah.
After having, who got relegated at non-league with Bournemouth, was third choice, fourth choice. Brought him in. It was exactly what we needed in our team. So Dean really understands the value of a player and a value of what a player can bring to the wider team. And it's not just about, is this guy got a big reputation? It's about, what can you bring to my team, and what do I need in my team? And I'm really excited about some of the new signings that we brought in for next season.
Mm. It seems the way you're speaking there, Mem, it's partly a technical recruiting, spotting a player skill that Dean Brennan has, but from what I can also see, he seems to very strongly have this ability to get everyone on the same page and drag everyone with him, and it seems to create a culture from the top that everyone that sort of self-sustains really, that he recruits good characters, and it seems to they seem to nurture each other, I guess, and they're all striving for the same thing, as opposed to players. You know how sometimes players, if they're not playing, they can kick up a fuss, and it's that ability to create a really strong culture that seems to have been a really important factor there.
I agree. There was a point, I think, like in the last couple of seasons, where people kept saying, "Is he only recruiting people that he's worked with before?" Like there seems to be a lot of players that he'd worked with before
Mm,
that were coming in, and what you realize very quickly, what you realize over time, is that for certain characters, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Billy Clifford didn't play a lot this season, but he knew him and Dean go way back, and he wasn't so he was somebody that behind the scenes was really supportive. Jerome Akimo was at Wildstone with Dean Brennan. Both of those players hardly played at all, and actually, but behind the scenes they were huge, from what I understand. So he'd brought in characters that he knew that if they weren't playing, they would still contribute in some other way. Talking about not just the players, though, I would also say that his management, his backroom staff, his management team is unbelievable as well.
mm.
So don't underestimate the abilities of people like Connor Smith, Kirk Raymond, Danny Hutchins. Plus, he's got some other guys. I don't know the names. Apologize to those guys. Don't know the names. But those guys are his eyes everywhere. And
Mm.
Connor, and from what I understand, Connor and Danny and Kirk will be watching players all the time. And then they
Yeah.
come to Dean and they say, Dean, I think this guy might be somebody. So, give an example of that is that Barnet was struggling with our goalkeeper. Nick Hayes is a great goalkeeper at this level, but he's not the greatest with his feet. And Barnet wanted a goalkeeper that can play with his feet. So Danny Hutchins, who's one of the guys in the background, I think he's officially kit manager or something like that. Found him. He was the number two at I think he was number two at Shrewsbury. Wasn't playing a game.
Owen Evans, you on about?
So what did I say? Sorry.
No. Owen Evans was at Cheltenham actually.
Cheltenham, that's it. I knew he was up that way. So it's Owen Evans. He was up at Cheltenham, and he found him. He was on the bench. He hadn't played for ages, but he'd found some footage and he'd identified that Owen Evans could do what we wanted, and he was a revelation. And I saw that Harrison Mail, and no shade on Harrison Mail, but uh, Owen Evans got almost as many clean sheets in his like 18, 20 games for Barnet that Harrison Mail got the whole season, and Harrison Mail got voted goalkeeper of the year. Should have been Owen Evans by a million miles. Unbelievable in goal. And again, it's the wider team working together as a unit. And Danny spotted this. Dean has trusted him. They've brought him in, and it's borne fruit.
I, by the way, just to emphasise what you're saying about Owen Evans, I think he was unlucky to lose his place at Cheltenham. So what happened was he actually started his season there reasonably well. I actually saw their game against Accrington Stanley in October, and he had to stay alert because he wasn't getting much action. But then at the last minute, he made this unbelievable save to reserve the victory. So I think his form in the first third of last season was pretty good, and then he got injured. And either Joe Day did pretty well in his absence, but also maybe the fact that Joe Day, who came in for him, had a good relationship with their manager from a previous club. So that was probably partly why Owen Evans wasn't number one when he returned. But really, it wasn't like he'd done badly in any way at all. So I think, I would expect Owen Evans to be one of the best goalkeepers in League Two next season, if presuming he resigns, which I can't see why he wouldn't.
Everybody,
Go on, Owen.
everybody who supports Barnet wants him back. Honestly, I think the only thing that will decide that is whether or not, because he obviously lives up that way, is whether or not he's prepared to move closer to Barnet, or closer to London, and whether or not the money works. The money works for him in terms of his wages. It's a bit different being on loan. So that's the only thing I think is holding him back, because he's got a new kid as well. So I hope that he looks at it and thinks Barnet's a place Barnet's going places.
Do Barnet ever have difficulty getting players in as a North London club? Because if you want to buy a house in North London, I mean, I think I know someone in the family had to pay absolutely through the nose just for a floor in a house, and that's kind of the market in North London, which I imagine can play a factor when it comes to the recruitment.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that Dean actually does kind of get flavour of which players are actually based in London. Because if they're based in London, then obviously you're not looking at relocation costs.
Mm,
But there are means as well, because Barnet, our home ground, is not a million miles. Is not too far off the M1. So
mm,
there are players like, for instance, he's gone now, but Jordan Cropper, Zach Brunt, Mark Shelton, who are from the north. They base themselves in Milton Keynes, which is a lot cheaper, and Milton Keynes to the ground is about, I think, 45 minutes, 50
yeah,
minutes.
right.
So it's quite an easy commute for them. I think Danny Collins lives in Milton Keynes as well. So I think what they've done is, because of you don't have to live in North London, because actually some of the routes in are coming from places which are a bit more affordable.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for
Yeah.
okay. So that's definitely a factor that you'd
Also, our chairman owns a lot of property.
ah
So there are means to sort of, like, he has in the past, players have rented a house off the chairman, or it's part of their package or something like that.
yeah. I just wanted to have, before I move on to the squad member, I did want to ask you one final question about Tony Kleenex, which was it's great that he's that Dean Brennan has reignited his passion for Barnet, and I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing. I suppose if we're throwing this forward and for Barnet to really try and not just survive in the Football League over the next few years, but really thrive within it and grow within it, is there a possibility that you might need a new pair of hands at the helm at some point down the line? And how do you think that, what do you think the timescale for that is likely to be?
I think it's a lot of. I think a lot of it's linked to the club growing organically, because
Mm.
actually Tony Kleanthos is in the top 100 richest people in the country. People would never know that.
Jesus Christ.
He is. He has got hundreds of businesses. Tony Kleanthos is a very, very smart businessman. And if you look him up, he used to be in partnership with Thea Paphitis, from
Yes,
Dragon's
Dragon's
Den.
Den, yeah.
Yeah, they used to be business partners. So Tony, as the Hive, is a multi-million-pound operation. It is. So when people say, "Oh, Barnet, how Barnet on their small crowds, funding all this," if you
Right.
go to the Hive, have you ever visited the Hive, Gabe?
Do you know what? It's on my list for next season.
Okay. When
Yeah.
you go to the Hive, you realize where the money comes from, because we have all these AstroTurf pitches that are rented out all the time. We
Right.
have uh, we have uh, we have weddings that go on in the ground inside the facilities. We've got a gym in there. We've got a cafe. We have obviously the club shops there, but there is loads and loads of different revenue streams coming into that club all year round. So not just match day, we're talking about like every day of the week. And that was always Tony's vision, was the club would be self-sustaining.
Mm.
Now, the other thing is as well, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but Barnet are on a mission to go back to Barnet itself. So I'm part of the Bring Barnet Back campaign,
Right.
which is looking at, so we have identified a site next to where Underhill was. So Tony realizes that actually the crowds will never grow to the level that he wants the crowds to grow to make us more sustainable.
Right.
So the feeling is that the Hive will always be there, and it will always be part of the Barnet group.
Mm.
But we need our stadium and our match days to be in Barnet, not in the neighbouring borough. So
Okay. Whereabouts is the Hive then?
the
Forgive my
Hive,
ignorance.
so the Hive is on the edge of Edgware and Harrow. So it's in the
Right.
borough. It's just over the border of Borough of Barnet, but it is in the borough of Harrow. And if you live in this part, if this part of the world, you realise that all the transport goes central. It rarely goes across, and if it does go across, it's tons of traffic. But all the trains go into the centre. So getting from Barnet to the Hive on a weeknight is an absolute nightmare. So our crowds generally on a Tuesday are terrible.
Mm.
Saturdays are usually a bit better, but we believe that we could get crowds of 3,000-4,000 people if we were to go back to Underhill, which is where our supporter base is mainly based, and a lot of people have stayed away because of that. So we have designed a new stadium. If you go on, I think it's if you go to bringbarnetback.com, you'll see that some of the plans on there. There'll be links to where the plans are, and you'll see this modern stadium, which is a very green stadium, which is using self-sustaining, using the rainwater, using sort of what's the word I want to use? It's lots of, but they've increased the biodiversity. So this is currently going through the process, and we've had.
Then would this be a £10 million project, roughly, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and the chairman is completely funding it without any outside sources. He's going to fund it
Oh,
himself.
so it's not just a fan campaign; it's something that the chairman's
No,
on board.
the chairman announced it. The chairman decided
Oh, I
during
see. Sorry, right.
the chairman just come out one day and said, "We're going back to Barnet. I've decided. I feel
Oh,
like
right. Okay, that's great.
So we've got behind it. We've got our own campaign group. We're trying to, we're trying to make friends and influence people in the area, people who've maybe moved in since, and to show that also it's going to be a community stadium, so there'll be community aspects to it as well. So this is a real big part of, not only is part of the, not only have we gone up, but we have this project that we are all really super behind as a fan base, and we all want to go back to Barnet, and it'll be like a 7,000 seat capacity stadium, and it will mean that the Hive will probably be rented out to another football team or another rugby team, and use this facility, but it will still be part of the Barnet group.
So just on that then, Mem, would it have been difficult to find a space in a borough of London where you tend to associate that kind of neck of the woods as being very, what's the word, very urban, I guess, and not much space? So would it have been difficult to find somewhere new?
Well, the borough of Barnet has some of the biggest, as the most green belt in the whole of all the London boroughs, I believe.
Oh.
But the difference is that obviously the borough of Barnet is there are a lot of people who've got money who live in Barnet, and actually historically Barnet Centre is High Barnet. It's not the borough of Barnet. We are named after High Barnet. Right. So we want to be in High Barnet, and also the thing about being in High Barnet and being where the old Underhill Stadium is that all the transport is literally on the doorstep of the is literally on the doorstep of the where the stadium is proposed. Whereas if you moved it to like one of these out of town places, you might as well stay at the Hive, because the Hive has got 2 tube stations which are within 5 to 10 minute walking distance. So you're not really, so you might as well stay at the Hive. But the High Barnet itself has got the Northern Line. It's got the bus. It's on a bus, loads of bus routes. It's on the Barnet High Street, which means all the local area benefits from the increased footfall of the fans. So it's so that it's got to be there. If it goes anywhere else in Barnet, it's going to be away from the transport. And ultimately, that's what you want. You don't want people coming in by car. You want them to come in on public transport or walking.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's great to hear. So hopefully things can continue with that. I wanted to have a look at the squad. Obviously, the goalkeeping position. You hopefully, fingers crossed, Owen Evan comes in, returns, and then it looks like you might need another one to come in and to be the understudy, I guess.
Yep, I think so. I think obviously for everyone, Owen Evans is number one. I believe he's the number one target. Although we have made some signings, I believe he's the one that we really, really want, because I think obviously no good team has, all good teams have a good goalie. So so I believe he's going to be, I know he's the target, because I've been told he's the number one target. So, and then number 2 will probably be just a younger goalkeeper that we find from another, one of the EFL clubs where they've not, released them.
Yeah, we found Josh Vickers a few years ago, and he went on to have a decent career higher up the league. So hopefully you can find something.
Yeah, I think he was at Arsenal, wasn't he? He was at Arsenal when we had him on loan.
Yeah. Right. So in terms of the defence, what I like is that it seems like all 3 of your centre halves are very comfortable stepping out of defence. Danny Kalinge, Nick Tavares, and Miles Kenlock. But Alowu could be a bit of a miss as he's gone to Salford.
Well, he is in some respects because Kenlock has got a cruise ship, done his cruise ship in at the end of last season. So we won't see Miles probably until about Christmas or past Christmas. So we've gone in and we've taken Adam Senior, who is Halifax's captain. So he's one of our new signings. They really wanted him. He's a really good player, and actually, from what I understand, there was a lot of League Two, League One, and even some League Club One clubs in for him. So that was a big coup to get him in, and he came in for the style of play. We also have, so I mean, Aluwu was a really good player for us, and he stepped in really well. But actually, he was, with everybody fit, he was our fourth choice centre back. And this is no shade on Luwu, because there was he played a lot of games, but that's because we had injuries to Danny Collins at various points, and then eventually we had one to Miles Kenlock. But when all of them were fit, it was usually Danny Collins on the right, it was Nick Tavares in the middle, and it was Miles Kenlock on the left. And Nick Tavares is our best player, and that our best centre back, and Luwu, that's his best position as the centre of the three. But he was up against Tavares, who is if it weren't for injuries, Tavares would be playing higher up the league. He was a brilliant signing for like that we got last summer.
Well, very excited to see Nick Tavares step up, because I step up sort of figuratively and also literally, I suppose, because the way that you play, it seems like Mark Shelton and Zach Brunt are very attack-minded number 8 who will break into the final third, and so Anthony Hartigan's the one who'd be a bit more of a 6 and drop in and conduct play. But I guess Nick Tavares, is he the one kind of pushing forward from that middle centre-back role and almost supporting Hartigan in those central areas?
Normally, it's the wide centre-backs that do the overlapping or underlapping. Okay. So usually what happens is that we play... So we are very aggressive and we play 1v1 across the whole pitch. And typically what happens is our wing-backs go wide and high.
Yes.
And then what happens is that our right and left centre backs usually play as it when we're in possession, as if like normal fullbacks, and they push on, and then they'll overlap and underlap with the wing backs. And then usually what happens is Anthony Hartigan and Tavares will sit, and Anthony Hartigan will distribute the ball. Tavares will be the guy that sweeps up. So it needs that position needs somebody who reads the game really well, very comfortable 1v1, very comfortable with big spaces behind them. Aluwu is very good with that as well. It's just that Tavares on the ball is an unbelievable player on the ball. So that was the only difference between the two of them. But when Aluwu played in there, he was very comfortable playing 1v1 and playing as the last man. We are very aggressive with the ball. You'll see that this year. We are very aggressive with the ball.
Yeah, I like that, because initially when I heard that you play with these attacking fullbacks, I assumed you'd be more of a possession-based side, but actually you are quite forward-thinking, I think, is the way. Like, if there's a positive is probably the best word. It's like always thinking, is there an aggressive first-time pass that we can play, and sort of that can unhinge opponents.
We've actually adapted the style. So last year, not this season, but the season before, we were very much a passing team. So, when Dean first came along, let's start there. So when Dean came along, the first thing he did was he developed our press, and he developed. But the problem we had was we expended a lot of energy with pressing because we couldn't keep the ball. But as we've gone on, we've got better with the ball. And last year, when we got knocked out in the playoffs, we were very much a passing, patient team, and Dean's added a plan B to that. So this season just gone, there were games where we were putting balls into the channels, and there were games where we were putting the balls early and what we did, we tried to play the pitch. So if the pitch was terrible, we weren't going to try and play possession football on a pudding of a pitch. So we put balls into the final third and we'd play off second balls. But at home, we keep possession and we move the ball quickly. So it's all about getting the ball. And we do keep the ball and we keep possession, and we have like 60% possession, 65% possession in a lot of games at home. But it's about moving the ball very quickly. And Hartigan has got better at doing that, because he used to be a little bit more pedestrian at moving the ball. Now he gets the ball out of his feet and he's whipping balls into the wingers, into the wing backs. He's got
I
a lot
think
of
that's lovely because I know Hartigan has got loads of ability. I know Wimbledon fans spoke very highly of him when he came through the academy there. I know Mansfield fans, I think, liked him, even though he got a bad injury there, if memory serves. So he's definitely always had that ability and that passing skill, if you like. But if you can add that infusion of directness or urgency, I suppose, on top of that ability and that sort of composure that he has, then that can be the perfect marriage. And from the clips that I've seen from the sort of the highlights of your games, I do like the way that he offers that sort of recycling option, the player to go back to when the sort of six more attacking players can't quite pull something together. It's back to Hartigan and he can conduct another attack.
Well, one thing also I've noticed this season, last season compared to the season before, is he's lost weight, and he's more mobile. So the season before that, he was very he got targeted a little bit sometimes by more mobile midfield players, and they'd get around him. But he's now a little bit more mobile. He's never going to be the quickest player in the world, but I think what Dean has done in this summer, and I think might be a really good, I think it'd be a really clever signing, is he's brought Emmanuel Osadebi from Forest Green. He's a big guy, covers ground, gets up and down the pitch. And I think what he's going to do, probably is going to provide for us is that caretaker role next to Hartigan. So while Hartigan's dictating, I think Osadebi is going to be in there breaking up play. He's going to be covering the ground, getting up and down. Mark Shelton kind of does that, but I think what he's done is with Osadebi is very much a very physical player, and I can see him scoring a lot of goals from box to box. So it's exciting. I think that move is exciting. It's kind of gone under the radar, but I think it goes back to the Moneyball thing. It's a really smart move because he's picked a player that offers our midfield something we don't quite have, which is that real legs in midfield.
Yeah, I can see that part of it. I can see how he definitely fits in. I think the one thing I would say from my point of view, I'm not sure the signing of Osadebe is necessarily the one that would move me much on Barnet, just because I think he's had a decade's worth of experience in the Football League and probably had one or two good seasons in that time. And so yes, I think he offers something different. I like the athleticism that he's going to bring. I think he can serve a very clear purpose. But at the same time, I think that his form at other clubs, other than maybe Macclesfield a few seasons ago, has been a little bit questionable. So hopefully he can buy into the culture that Dean's created. So we'll wait and see.
This goes back to what I was saying before, though, wasn't it? Is players that were underappreciated or players that weren't considered to be up there, and then Dean's brought them in, given them a specific role, and then they fly. He's looked after them. So let's see.
I'm not going to try and make you doubt Dean Brennan as a recruiter. I think that would be too ambitious for me.
but that's my point, though. If you notice how you were like, oh, I'm not sure, but Dean's seen something in him, and he saw something he's seen something in other players that other fans have said he's meh. The guy's meh, and then these players have suddenly flourished. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully he can be another Mark Shelton. I wanted to come back then to Danny Collinge. I think he announced that he was staying on from a holiday. It looked very nice over there, didn't it? But talk to me about the role that he provides as that kind of underlapping centre half, and he seems to have a nice shot on him as well. So that adds something different.
Yeah, Danny Collinge was a massive re-signing because I genuinely thought that he was gone. I thought he was probably going to end up somewhere like Milton Keynes because that's where he lives, and he used to be. He's got he's got a connection where he was in the youth team there and stuff. So to me, that looked like I thought that might end up. But what Danny offers us is, as a 1v1 defender, he's quality. I don't know if you know the story behind Danny Collinge, but Danny was in
Colchester, I think, wasn't he initially?
Yeah, but what Danny ended up, he came from Milton Keynes, went to play for Stuttgart, play for the England youth system, but then for whatever reason, so he was in the Stuttgart youth system, and then what happened is that for whatever reason, it just didn't happen for him. And I think the reason why is that Danny's about 6'6", 6'1", so he's not a massive centre back, and he's not the quickest, but for Danny, it's all the brains. He's such a smart player. And what happened was he ended up at Dover and in a team that got relegated. But Ephraim Mason Clark, who's now at Coventry, reported to Dean Brennan. He said, "This guy is the hardest 1v1 player I've played against this season." And Dean put his name down on his list and kept an eye on Danny. And then at the end of the season, when they got relegated, he brought Danny in with no fanfare or anything. Danny's shown himself to be a really smart football player. He's good, very good 1v1, gets his angles really well. And what he does is he ghosts into the box. He's scored goals from corners, he scored goals from breaking in from deep, coming in at the last minute. He scored all types of goals. And he's I think last season he scored more than this season, but he's for a centre back, he's done really well. And what he does is he offers, because he's so comfortable in possession, he is able to overlap, he's able to underlap, he's able to contribute in the final third, as well as doing his day job, which is playing at the back. And he's quite comfortable. He's quite comfortable playing 1v1 with players. That is a massive re-signing.
And again, what brilliant ties brilliantly with that theme that we were talking about, where you got a player that's got a skill set that doesn't sort of fit into the boxes that have maybe been carved out by other people. But Dean Brennan has said you actually fit in our box, and he's found home for himself.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's definitely, and he's such. And I genuinely thought I'm surprised that because he's so good on the ball and he's such a modern defender, I genuinely thought that other clubs would be like in higher divisions would come for him. And I just think it's that. Yeah, I think it's the little things I said to you about. He's not the tallest, he's not the quickest, and people and people get a bit obsessed with that sometimes when they're recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I froze a bit there. I think just finishing off on the centre backs. Is it Kenlock is the only one I can see who's left-footed, I think, and he's out until Christmas. I don't know whether Kensdale or Senior are. Is that one thing that you think might need to recruit? I mean, you've signed Ryan Galvin, whether he could play as a left centre half, but I think he's more of a wing back.
He's played apparently at Halifax as a left centre back, so he may fill in. But to be honest, towards the end of last season, Alu was playing as a left centre back when Kenlock got injured. So it could be that in the meantime, what happens is a Senior or Kensdale will play that position just to sort of keep, what's called until Kenlock comes back in. Because the thing is, if we play Galvin at left centre half anyway, a left centre back, we've got Idris Kanu, and we've got Ryan Glover as our wing backs anyway. So we could cope in the short term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. By the way, you've mentioned Ryan Glover there. He was one player that from the highlights, I absolutely loved watching him. I love how you pin your wing back so high at the pitch and just the magic. I mean, Glover particularly, the magic that he can create, that ability to excite people pretty much like a winger and take them 1v1, but also cut inside and curl shots and create. I mean, I can't wait to see him in League Two because he looks like a really exciting footballer.
He's a league footballer. He should have found a league club last year. I can't believe that he was a free agent until like the end of August. And then apparently we were in his ear the whole time. But he wanted to get a league move and he didn't until he ended up coming to us. And he's unbelievable. I'd say the thing is what I'd say about why our wing back system is so good is that in a lot of teams that they have where they have wing backs, they usually have either like failed wingers or failed, or players. They'll play a left back as a wing back who is good at the defensive stuff, but going forward hasn't got the quality. But what Barnet have is we've got two. They're basically wingers playing in wing backs, but because of their work ethic, and usually a lot of wingers are quite flaky and they don't like to do the tracking back bit. But Ryan Glover and Idris Kanu have got a work ethic that unbelievable. Like Idris doesn't look like the sort of player that should love defending as much as he does. And if you watch him, he's like this flying winger, but he gets back and he gets stuck in and he will defend that back stick. And Glover's the same. So we've got both sides. We've got two players who will do that, but they've also got the quality in the final third because they are forward thinking players. So I think the only thing we probably, and I think Galvin will probably come in, is to add extra depth and competition to that area because Glover can play on either side, Idris can play on either side, Galvin's more of a left side, and it'll be
you've got Coker on the left side, I think, I believe as
He's
well.
gone. So
Oh,
Coker's
has he
gone.
gone? Sorry, my mistake.
Coker's gone. No, he's gone to Ebbsfleet. It was because his contract was coming up, and he decided he wanted a. I think he got a 2-year deal at Ebbsfleet, so he's
Right.
joined them. But Coker, what left foot? But he was like, but yeah, you need an engine to play that, and he was coming. He's he's not getting any younger.
Mm.
So
Yeah, well, I think hopefully Ryan. It sounds from what I heard of Ryan Galvin speaking to someone from Halifax. They said that he's very good going forward. Maybe a little bit rusty defensively, but I think with the way that you play, where wing backs are required to work hard, like you said, but there is a lot more emphasis on what they do going forward. So hopefully he can provide, some really nice competition for Glover there.
yeah, no, definitely. It adds competition around the team because Glover could play on the right, and it means that Idris has got to fight for his place.
Mm.
But it's the beauty of having good options, isn't it? Is that everybody pushes each other. So we're gonna have some good options. There are still areas of the team I still think we're a little bit light. So and I can see some more. I can see that maybe about 3 or 4 more players coming in.
Yeah, well, it's nice. I think you're in quite a stable position where you've not needed, as you'd expect for a team that's just got 102 points. Yeah, I wanted to talk about, we've touched on Hartigan at the base of midfield. So I wanted to ask you about Zach Brunt. That looks like a lovely technician to me. And he looks like a pretty key player in terms of creativity in the final third.
Yeah, I mean, he did lose his place towards the end of last season, but I think a big part of it was because Reece Brown and Callum Stead. So we play with 2 number 10s, a right number 10 and a left number 10. And by the end of the season, Callum Stead was our top scorer, and Reece Brown had come in and he scored some really important goals. So Zach, through no fault of his own, found himself on the bench. But there have been points in the season where Zach actually played as one of the deeper midfielders with Hartigan. And I think that Division 2 will suit Zach better because I think it'll be less like up and at him. It will still be tough, but I think the National League is a little bit more sort of, there's lots of tackles flying in, the ball's flying around the place sometimes. And also the pitches are pretty poor in a lot of National League grounds. So I think the pitches will probably be better in the League 2, which will benefit him. And I think also people forget he's still only 23. He's still young. So he's still got plenty, plenty of developing to do. And he's a proper character as well. So I think he's really ingratiated himself with the fans at Barnet. So I think he'll get a lot of support to really stamp his mark on the team next year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think from what I've seen, I definitely think he can really contribute in that final third. But I also suppose I wouldn't mind the idea of him operating deeper, like you mentioned, because you'd get him on the ball more often and he can play that more prominent role, a bit more like we see with Hartigan. Because I think some of his longer passing, which you get to do more often if you play a bit deeper, I think his long range passing seems to be pretty good as well.
Yeah, we sometimes flip it. So at the moment we play like a box in midfield. So we play with Hartigan with somebody next to him, and then 2 number 10s. But sometimes what we do is we play a diamond there instead. Hartigan at the base, and we play a right and a left 8, and then we play with somebody plays it just off the striker. So sometimes that's Callum Stead, but they rotate a lot. And so in that situation, sometimes Zach coming into that scenario is quite good because he's not necessarily always the deepest, but he's got the freedom, to find space. And to be honest, I think his assist record last year was pretty decent. So he does contribute a lot in, even if he's not scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk to me about Mark Shelton and the impact that he's had. You already touched on him earlier in terms of defying his doubters with Barnet, which so many players seem to do. But yeah, just talk to me about his role alongside Hartigan.
So I see Mark Shelton a little bit like Frank Lampard. I mean, obviously they're different levels, but Frank Lampard was never a player that was involved in the playing deep and was never a player that was going to dictate a game. But what Frank Lampard did really well, which is he contributed in the final third. He made good runs, broke past strikers and got in on the end of stuff. and he made lots of good third man runs and things. And that's essentially what Mark Shelton has been doing this year. Actually, on the ball, I would say on the ball, Mark is probably he's all right, but he's not going to open your team up. He's not like a Zach Brunt who can open a team up with a pass. But
Yeah.
what Mark is great at is that Mark's very athletic and he makes good runs. And he's been coached to make better runs so that he's making more hurtful and he strikes the ball really well. So he scored a lot of goals coming in late, making late runs. And if you watch him at any point when Hartigan's got the ball, he's always looking to break into space. So his game is, I think what's happened with Dean Brennan was done with Mark Shelton, which is probably why other clubs didn't think Mark Shelton was that much, is he simplified his game and made it so that Mark, you get back into position, win the ball, but when you haven't got the ball, when Hartigan's got the ball, you get into space and you find space in where it's going to hurt teams. And so by simplifying it, I think that's made him more effective.
Yeah, I think you've got to be very careful in the modern era of tactics play such a prominent role in the modern era because our understanding of the game has become more advanced. But I think sometimes these half-hour seminars on the absolute finer details of tactics, I think a lot of players probably switch off after about 10 minutes. So actually, if you can simplify someone's game and allow them to focus on 3 key things but do them really effectively, then actually that's sometimes better than asking them to compute all these different nuggets of information. So it sounds like simplicity has been the order of the day with regards to Mark Shelton.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, think about any football team, and I think this is what people need to understand when you have a football team, is that you have your key players that things revolve around, and then you have your, essentially your grafters around them. So you have your framework, and then so in our framework is we have, the framework is people like Hartigan, people like Collins, some of our wide guys, and our focal point up front. And then everybody else around them is finding their place within that. So it doesn't need for Mark Shelton or anybody else to do anything too complicated, because the guys who are running the team in terms of tactically is like maybe 4 or 5 players, and then the rest of them are there to serve those 4 or 5 players. So I think sometimes from the football fan, we expect every player to suddenly be a Galactico. And actually, you see the teams that win stuff like a Paris Saint-Germain, it's about the system working really well and a couple of conductors.
Mem, let me take you on to my biggest apprehension about Barnet, because as much as I'm really enjoying talking about all the positive things about 102-point season and the flying wing backs and Brunt and Hartigan being brilliant on the ball and Shelton getting in among the goals, and we'll talk about the strikers as well, Tavares as well, we've mentioned. I do have one big concern about the current setup of the team, which is you've got wing backs that fly up the pitch and in possession, they're pinned really high up. You've got 2 up top. You've got Zach Brunt, who's kind of like an advanced playmaker. You've got Mark Shelton breaking into goal-scoring areas as well. And that, I fear, is going to leave a massive gaping hole in the centre of the pitch, especially if it's often the wide centre halves that are the ones getting forward as well. I think there's a massive gaping hole potentially in the middle of the pitch for somebody like Anthony Hartigan, who I wouldn't really say is a classic ball winner per se necessarily. I think he's more of a playmaker, like we've mentioned. I think National League sides might not have been able to cut Barnet open from that sort of attacking posture in transitions that effectively, but I think with a step up, I think the risk is increased. So that would be the one thing that I'm thinking, got to be a little bit careful there. Not quite sure how the balance is going to work out.
A year ago, I would say that was completely, that's a very valid point, because we were getting punished on transition, but the team this season, part of the reason this team has accumulated so many points is that we've learned how to stop transitions. One of which is our passing patterns, which is that there are certain passes that the team will not make because if you lose the ball in those certain places, you give opportunities to break. So the team has evolved in terms of how they move the ball. They're not looking to play it into areas that are going to be cut out, and The second point is the team's become a bit more streetwise to transition. And we were too honest before, now the team's a little bit more streetwise. And so we win the ball really high up. We're really aggressive with our press. And this is a team that covers a lot of miles in the team. They're a team that can get back very, very easily. So yes, Hartigan is not the fastest player in the centre, but he is it. We have methods to stop teams transitioning on us. And this season, actually, we didn't get punished that much on the transition, even against the stronger teams. We actually, like for instance, when York came to us, we absolutely battered them. And they just could not get out. I mean, they took their playmaker Dan Batty off after 30 minutes. Also, essentially putting the white flag up because they realised that they could not play through us. As much as they were trying to play through us, they couldn't, because we were so aggressive with our press. We are a really, really athletic team. And this season, unless teams are going to match us for athleticism, they're going to find that we can also play football. So I'm really super confident. And I'm not saying this is the first time in my life as a Barnet fan. I think we could do back-to-back promotions. Yeah.
Okay.
This team is so finely tuned. This team is so finely tuned that I think back-to-back promotions is on the cards. There's 3 promotion places to go for, 4, isn't there? It's 4 and 3 automatic, and I think we've got a chance to get into one of the 3 automatics. There you go. Bold statement there.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Blimey. Mic drop. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm really curious to see how that pans out. Whether it's great to hear that you feel like you've kind of made some changes to kind of combat that risk. Yes, I'm curious to see how that all pans out. But yeah, I'm satisfied by that answer enough. I want to come on to Callum Stead, because I did watch one of the extended highlights games I did watch was Oldham away, and I think it was the 3rd goal where I absolutely loved the movement of Callum Stead, because he showed both sides. He showed the pace and power to just drive beyond opponents and by sheer force. And then when it came to the, to the finish, he was able to take it the other way and have the footwork to sort of wrong foot a defender, and then the finish was amazing. So what I love about Callum Stead, because he's a very different role to Unlove. Unlove seems to be the focal point, that strong hold up player, and Callum Stead seems to kind of buzz around him and go wide and bring that energy to the team, and clearly he's capable of moments of brilliant quality like that.
So him and Reece Brown. So you got 2 of them. So one of them plays from, so essentially if you put the line down the middle of the pitch, one plays from the centre to the right and one plays from the centre to the left. And both of them are really, really tricky players. Both of them can go past the player. Both of them got pace. Both of them got finish. And I think if you try and stop Reece Brown, you're going to get Callum Stead, and vice versa. Both of them are really, really tricky customers. Callum Stead, half the time, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't think half the time he knows what's going to happen. Sometimes when he does a turn or whatever, and it's kind of, he's so wriggly. He just got this ability to just turn and move his body and manipulate his body and twist and then suddenly come out the other end with the ball. I think if Callum's still got another level, I think, to go to. I think if Callum is more cleaner in his finishing, I think Callum's going to get 20 goals. This season, he's every season he's been, getting better. And I think I was a bit disappointed he didn't get 20 last year because I felt he had it in him. So, but he's I'm still happy we've got Callum, because I thought somebody was going to come and buy him at some point. There's not many players like him around. So, but yeah, he's going to be. I think he's going to love league football.
But if I'm not mistaken, Mem, it is a case of Stead or Brown, because if we're talking about 3-4-2-1 and you've got Shelton and Hartigan at the base of midfield, and you've got Zach Brunton as one of the 2 number 10s, then that does leave Brown or Stead. So that's going to be the competition. It's
2 of 3. So like I said, Zach lost his place in the running last year in the season just
Oh,
gone. So he lost his place. He didn't. He was
right.
coming. He was coming off the bench. If you look at most of the end of the games, it was Reece Brown with Stead.
Okay, right. Interesting.
Yeah, so it was Hartigan thing. So Brown, obviously there was a rotation there going on, and there were games, but Zach wasn't a first choice. They'll rotate. There's enough games. There'll be like 46 games this year, so and there'll be injuries, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of rotation going on in that area.
Yeah, I think personally, I probably would want Brunt in one of those two number 10s, just purely from the sort of snippets that I've seen, just because I think Brunt does bring that advanced playmaking quality that's something a bit different, whereas I feel like you'd kind of miss that a little bit, but then obviously not, because you did win all those games with Brian and Said, so it's a nice problem to have, isn't it?
It's options because they all do different things. Brown can play as a striker as well. He can play off the striker. He can play in the 10 role. He can play on the wing. He gives you options, and so it's horses for courses in a lot of cases. So we will play teams that will be the games where Zach would be best in that area. There'll be the games where Zach's better playing deeper. So if a team sits off and he's playing behind the ball, there's no point playing Zach in the 10. You play Zach in as one of the deeper midfielders and get him to try and open teams up.
Could Zach be a backup to Hartigan option, if you like, for next season?
Could be. But
let's say Hartigan got injured.
Yeah.
After the window closed.
Well, one of the things about Hartigan, which was incredible, was his availability in the last 2 seasons. I don't think he's missed a game, or he's barely missed a game in 2 seasons.
Oh, I'm delighted for him, because I think he was playing well for Mansfield, but then he got a bad injury that kind of disrupted things. So I'm delighted that he's been able to keep that consistency since then.
But I think Zach quite likes playing. Apparently, if he did an interview for one of our our friends' podcasts, the Be Brief, and he did an interview, and I think he was talking about like he actually quite likes playing deeper and getting stuck in. Although people assume that he's this kind of fancy Dan kind of player, he does like it when he's in the mood and he's got that's his role. He likes getting stuck in, so he could easily do it. I mean, there are a lot of options, and also the thing about the team is the team, although it is ostensibly a 3. Essentially it's a 3-4-3, 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, that kind of thing. But it does change, so it can be at various points. Instead of the box in midfield, the 2 at the base and the 2 at the top, it can turn into a diamond in midfield, which then straight away changes what you need from the skill set of the players. So, and we've got players with different abilities that can do different things.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting. I want to talk about the impact of Leon Love, because for a January signing from the National League South, I think you won 14 of the 17 games that he started in the second half of last season, and there are other games where he came off the bench and scored and helped you win. So, full marks for impact. And from what I can gather, it's not like Unlove was prolific in terms of goals in the second half of last season, but it sounds like he's the kind of player who can make a huge contribution without necessarily scoring, which I think is always a good sign in a striker.
Well, it's a strength, and what he would do really well. And I mean, it was a big call from Dean Brennan to sell Nicky Kabamba, who was our top scorer for 2 or 3 seasons. It was a big. That was a big call, and ultimately, I think what he come to realize is that Nicky had got to the point in his career, and this is my observation, I'm just speculating what I think Dean saw, was I think Nicky was at the point where he was quite happy to be just a kind of like, a guy that gets on the end of things. And he was the physical side. He was not as physical as he'd previously been, and not much of not as a target man. And I think what allowed teams to do is go, okay, you know what, we play 1v1, and I'll mark Nicky, and then the other guy steps out to Callum Stead or to Reece Brown or to Zach Brunt. But as soon as we changed that option to Love, what happened is the defenders were having to two defenders were having to come and occupy him because he's so powerful, and the ball comes to him, it sticks. So they were having to try and fight with him, and he was fighting defenders, which meant that he was creating space elsewhere around them. because by suddenly going to 2 defenders, and it was noticeable as well. It gave us a focal point that when the ball was put in the air, players were running off him, hoping flick-ons or hoping that he would the ball would run to them, loose. So he was there was I think it was the York game when we beat them 3-1 at home, and he was absolutely ragdolled their centre back for the whole game, and it was just an unbelievable performance from him. He just completely just wiped the floor with this guy, and just the guy couldn't get near him. He just get bouncing off him, and that's what it gave to you, this focal point that we could play off. And we've got all these great little talented nippy players around him, and but the ball needs to stick, and he's just brilliant at that. He's horse. It's a horse, But then the big games we didn't play because we didn't need that. So I think I though personally think that we will try and find an upgrade of him.
No, I think I think this is the great thing. I think when players have performed that well in the second half of the season, you want to keep that synergy in place. I mean, I might as well ask you now, actually, Mem, in terms of recruitment, from what I can gather looking at the squad at the moment, I think you look pretty good from goalkeepers, obviously the main priority. So you're going to need 2 goalkeepers, hopefully 1 including Evans. You're going to need, I think, maybe another midfielder or 2 in terms of those, somebody to partner in terms of just depth, I guess, because looking at the advanced midfield options, it does look at an alternative to, I suppose you got Osadabi there who can play there, but I'd had him pegged as a right wing back options as well. Yeah, so maybe 1 more midfielder for depth.
I think we'll have one. I think we'll have a right wing back. I think we obviously, like you said, 2 goalkeepers. I think a right wing back. So basically we have 2 for each position. So if we have Galvin plus, say we assume that Ryan Glover's going to play on the left, and then Idris Kanu on the right with somebody else. I mean, I think between the 3 of them, they could probably occupy the 2 roles anyway. But I think we'd put just to be sure, you 2 for each position. I think centre mid definitely. I think maybe what we're looking to go big on a centre midfield player. I think Osadabi would be a good player, but I'm not sure that is going to be I don't believe that he's brought him in as our starting centre mid. I think he wants somebody in that mould as Osadabi, but I think he's looking to probably bide his time and then save his money. And Dean Brennan will probably that'll be probably our star player, or he's probably saving up. And I think a striker as well. I think we need probably 1, maybe a second, 2 strikers.
Okay, so even with Love's form in the second half of last season, you would look at going for somebody with a bit more football league pedigree, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. I think what you probably end up with, I think what will happen is, I'm just looking at what he did with the run-in last year. He brought in Dom Telford, who is a kind of more of a goal poacher. And I think what this team probably could do with is a player that can play on the last man and has real legs. So I think the guy who I was thinking of was someone like a Tyree Shade. That kind of I think it's Tyree Shade. The one I'm thinking of is it Halifax? Is the guy who's really rapid.
I know he played for Warsaw, Tyree Shade.
Yeah, I think it might be Tyree Shade I'm thinking of. I might be wrong, but there's a guy in my head I can see who's really good on last man, quick, and I think we could do with that kind of injection of pace in the front line. I think we could do with probably an upgrade on Love, in terms of a player who can play with his back to goal, but also can score more goals. Because that's probably his main weakness, isn't it? Is the number of goals he scores.
Yeah, I mean, but then you probably argue that you can get a ton of goals from elsewhere in the team if you've got a centre forward who can facilitate that. So it's kind of a trade off. I mean, if you can find someone who can do what Love does, and maybe has a better strike rate, then you take the opportunity. But it sounds like Love's done brilliantly, so I'm sure it'll be a valued part of the squad for next season.
Tyree Shade is a place for Eastleigh. That's the one.
Right, okay.
He's a winger, but I think he could be converted into a striker.
So I think from what you've said, 1 more striker, 1 more deeper midfielder, because you playing 2 6s if you like, but with one of the with Shelton kind of pushing on. Maybe a right wing back, depending on what you want to do with Osadebe, and then a couple of goalkeepers. So we're looking at probably 4 or 5 additions by the looks of things.
Yep, which is what I said. I said it earlier, didn't I? I said 4. I said 3 or 4, 5. We're saying 3, 4, 5. It's in that realms. We've got a couple of young players who can play in who are defenders, but I think they're going to end up on loan now because I think
you got Joe Eastwood. Is it Joe Eastwood?
So I think Joe Grimwood might end up
Grimwood,
going just because I think he's 25 now, and I think he's not a youth. He's not like a young prospect anymore. And I think also when he was brought in, I think some of these players that we brought in last year were kind of projects that we thought if we're still in this division, there might be the bill. But I think the promotion obviously resets the expectation now, and I think are these players now, some of these younger players or some of these players who are squad players, capable of playing in the league? I look at people like Finley Wilkinson, got Jermaine Francis. I quite like Jermaine Francis as well, but I think there's something going on there, and I think he's going to go, but he'll probably end up being an upper team in the National League because he's done really well at Braintree last year. Jermaine Francis, he's an exciting winger, scores goals, creates goals, and I wish that we could find a way to incorporate him, but I think there's something that's gone on there, and I think I think he'll be going. So we've got, I think we've got a bit. I think there's going to be a bit of movement around our squad in terms of our, in terms of some of our sort of fringe players.
Any youngsters to watch out for then, do you think?
Well, I would. Joe Rye is the one. So Joe Rye was on loan a lot last year, but Joe is looks a really good footballer. He's a centre back. He's not the tallest centre back, but he is a player that plays out from the back, and he's got really smart footballer. I think he's in his early 20s, and I think we got him from, I want to say Chelmsford, but I might be wrong. No, Worthing. I think we got. Was it Worthing? I'm going to Google that now. So Joe was a prospect that we picked up. We like the look of him, and when he's played, he's done well. But he's the off centre back is probably our most what's called competitive part of our team.
Strongest area, yeah.
Yeah, Worthing. He came from Worthing, that very talented Worthing team that's been.
He came from Worthing originally.
Yeah, that team had people like oh God, who's the fellow who's at York City? Came through Barnet from Worthing, and then
Depot Akinyemi.
No. There's Joe Felix who's at Worthing as well, who's at York, and then there's the other guy at York who was at Barnet, and I've forgotten his name.
I'm not sure,
but he's another player. So that Worthing team, Joe Rye was one of that Worthing team that done really well in the National League South. So and Andy, I was called Hinshelwood from York City. Was the manager of Worthing. So
yes.
But I think Joe is probably going to end up going on loan for about half a season, and I think eventually he'll get integrated into the squad. So he looks a good player. But apart from that, we don't have a huge amount coming through. So one of the benefits of being an EFL team is that hopefully we can start up our academy again.
Yes, because you had to scrap it in 2018, didn't you?
Yeah, when you look at our academy was unreal. So just to give you an idea of the academy people that came through, Ephron Mason Clark.
Yeah.
Jack Taylor, who's
Ronnie Edwards as well.
Ipswich, yeah. Ronnie Edwards, who's I think is he still at Southampton on the books?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Harry Taylor, who's at Southend, came through that youth system. Justin Amaluza, who's just gone to Grimsby, was in that youth system. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There's some other players who came through that. Elliot Johnson, who was at Southend.
Who's that right wing? But Andy Yadam.
No, Andy Yadam came through Watford, but he came through Barnet. He was at Barnet, but he wasn't in our academy. But our academy is we like last season. Some of the funding came from the payments from Ephron Mason Clark. Right. So our chairman is very much a believer in the youth system because we've done very well in the past. So, but because we lost our funding, we had to fold the youth. We had to fold our. I'm hoping that part of the benefits of if we do manage to get the 3 up between National League and the Football League is that there will be some kind of what's the word, streamlining, where the National League has to adopt similar standards to the Football League to get that third place. And I'm hoping that a part of that will be about academies and things like that, and maybe something to do with academy funding. Because that was a real shame that we had to fold that academy.
Absolutely. So I've got to do. I think I've got to do my 1-24 predictions in late July, and one of my processes for this, Mem, is trying to score each of the 72 each club on a series of 14 categories that I think are going to determine their fortune. So what I'd like you to do is give me a number between 1 and 10, quick fire really, on each of these 14 categories. If you're up for that.
So say that again. Repeat that. The instruction.
Okay, so give me a number between 1 and 10 for each category that I'll name in terms of where Barnet are at. Does that make sense?
Okay, all right, let's go then. Let's see that.
Brilliant. All right, so ownership.
I'll give Tony an 8.
An 8 for Tony. Okay, great. I will go. Structure is the next one.
So by structure, we're talking about football structure. We're talking about financial structure.
Yeah, it's a broad one. So the operational side of the club, the facilities, the quality of recruitment, the day-to-day running of the club, things like that all come into it.
I'd say it's a 9 now.
9. Okay, great. Budget for next season.
Probably be comparison. I reckon it'd be about 7.
7. Okay. Quality of management.
10. Of course, it's 10.
10, of course. Goalkeeper. I mean, if you sign Owen Evans.
Okay, so if we sign Owen Evans, it's an 8.
It's an 8. Okay.
I can't. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the plans. Unless I text Dean and say, Dean, tell me what's your plans goalie wise, and I've got to fill out Gabriel's scoring.
Yeah. So defense.
I think this is the strongest part of our team. It's the one we've got the most depth, and some of our best players are in that. I would say probably an 8.
An 8. Okay, great. Midfield.
I would say 7.
7.
Yeah, I've got a sneaky suspicion that although Mark Shelton's been very successful in National League, I'm not sure he's going to have the similar impact in the Football League.
Okay.
I think that's probably a position
you might go for an athletic box-to-box midfielder.
I think that's where we do the upgrade in terms of Hartigan. I think Hartigan's will still be one of the better players in this division, but I think we need to upgrade in that area.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Attack.
I would say I'm going to go for 7. Okay, and I'm going to caveat that because I think that as we attack as a team, so there's the goals spread out quite a lot, but I still think we could upgrade I think we could upgrade in Leondov.
Okay. Depth. Let's say you do get 4 additions.
I would say let's go, as it stands and what we might bring in, I think it might be a 7.
Okay.
I think it's going to take a couple of seasons for us to build that squad to a league squad, because you've got to remember, because there will be natural wastage. There will be players that who are at the top of their game, and at some point we got to move on from them. So I think that will happen over the next 2 years if we stay in the league. So that is what's called that's what I think in terms of
Squad stability.
I would say
pretty high, really.
I'd say 9. I say 9.
Yeah. Lost a low woo, but you've got probably your best back 3 still there. Growth potential. Now, I wouldn't say from the outside it's necessarily a particularly young squad. It seems to be a mix of, it's mainly peak age players, I would say, from what I can gather in terms of the age profile of the squad.
Yeah, I do. I think at some point, I think what will happen is it will be an evolution of players as they get to a certain age, because I think, you're right. There are players of a certain age in our squad They're not obviously, they're all in their kind of mid to late 20s, a lot of our players. So I think at some point there's going to be more young blood put in. But I think obviously by being a league club, it makes us a bit more attractive to players. So even though Barnet, the Hive, is an amazing facility and it's an amazing place to train at and play football at, ultimately, unless you're a league club, it's still not quite attractive enough. So I think that will allow us to attract a better standard player. Now we're a proper league club.
Okay, so should we say a 5 or 6 in terms of growth potential?
Yeah, I would say a 6. Yeah, just because of the supporter size as well. The size of the crowds as well.
Okay. My next category is team spirit.
10.
Yeah. Fitness.
9.
Okay.
No, let's say 8. Let's say 8 actually, because we've got some players we have to manage them.
Okay. All right, so we'll say 8 for now. And then quality. So what I'm talking about here is the technical ability of the players, individual quality.
I'd say a 7.
Okay.
Obviously, we're in a new division. The quality, the standards can be higher.
It's hard, isn't it, to pitch Barnet for League Two because what you've probably seen is amazing football and a team that's really dominant, but in a lower division. So there's loads of optimism, and I think a lot of that is absolutely sort of justified. But at the same time, there is still that feeling that this is going to be a bit of a step up, and you don't quite know how that's gonna work. But there's definite reason for optimism.
I mean, from what I've seen of league football, my expectation is that the lower third, maybe the lower half, will be equivalent to what we played at the higher end of the National League, and those teams didn't give us a huge amount of trouble. So I feel like if the step up will be the higher end of League Two.
Well, I mean, I spoke to an out-of-work manager earlier in the season, and he said, for having watched games, that it was the worst iteration of League Two that they've seen in 20-odd years of management. So I think that does show that the standard, the bar has possibly been lowered last season. Whether it'll be raised again from a few big spending clubs that might get their act together, but I definitely think that there could be an opportunity for someone like Barnet with the promise that you've shown.
I actually think that the reason why the level has dropped is because there's only 2 to go down, and I think there's an element of clubs not wanting to break the bank because they know they're not going to get relegated, or they're going to struggle to get relegated because of it's only 2 clubs go down. And I think what's happened over time, that's meant that there's a lot that the standard is lowered because that's there's no need to be that much better to stay up. And I think that's part of the reason why I think 3 up needs to happen, because I think there's too many clubs swilling around, the plug hole, but not quite gone down the plug hole, who've been doing that for too many years and have not improved as teams. And I think the difference is that National League, you have to get 100 points to get promoted. So you have to build a really strong team to get up. You don't accumulate 100 points with an average team. So, and because of the competition is so high, it has pushed teams to have it like 96 points that York got this year and didn't go up. So I think that is what part of the big reason why 3 up needs to happen, because to improve the level of League Two and create that fluidity and movement so that teams are playing in the right division. I watched who was it I watched recently? I watched it last year, and it was one of the worst games of football I'd seen. I can't remember off the top of my head. I just flicked it on, and I just thought Barnet would smash both these teams. And I think they will. I think they'll make meet of some of these teams that have just swilling around, because Barnet have had to build a really good side that has got good, understanding, has got good, is a really well functioning team. Whereas, some of these teams are just happy to stay, be 4th bottom, as long as they don't go down. It's not good for football.
That makes sense. So again, I kind of asked you about the expectation, Mem. I suppose expectation and belief of what might be possible are slightly different things. Because I'd be surprised if any Barnet fans going into the season saying we have to finish in the top three, because there's obviously excitement about getting back into the Football League and all that kind of thing. But there's also seems to be an ambition about the fan base that we've got a team that could challenge, could go again.
Yeah, no, I definitely think. I mean, sorry, I'm not quite sure what your question was in terms of.
Yeah, so my question is the expectation, the ambition for this season.
Well, I think most clubs that come out of National League, and most of the clubs that come out of National League and do really well in the National League, generally are competing for promotion again. So Chesterfield, I think, had a little bit of a slump, but I think if Chesterfield had played the way that Chesterfield could properly play, or that we saw them play, I think they could have got. They should have been up there getting promoted. I think they had a massive injury crisis, didn't they? At one point in midfield, which we lost Bailey Hobson, we had him on loan. So they pulled him back because they just had so many injuries. So I think that was a big part of the reason why they didn't compete. But then when you look at Notts County and you look at Wrexham, you look at Stockport, all these clubs have come from National League and gone straight up again, or have been competing, to get promoted again. So why can't it be us? We'll be riding the crest of a wave.
Certainly will be. 3 more questions for you then, Mem. What's the biggest reason to believe that Barnet can meet their ambitions this season?
Eye test. We've watched our team. We've watched our team for 2 seasons play some exquisite football, and we fell short 2 years ago, and then this season we've managed to get over the line. But it's the relentlessness of this team, and the fact that at home we haven't lost a game at home for well over a year. So we've gone a whole season without being unbeaten at home. So I think teams are going to struggle to get points at the Hive, and it's about us going away and being able to pick up enough points to make us competitive. But we're more than capable of
that. Biggest reason for doubt?
Injury crisis. I just think that you can't be sure when you might have an injury crisis, and if you have an injury crisis. So the reason we got relegated in 2018 was because we had a massive injury crisis, and we had 2 of our top scorers were out for half the season. So we had nobody score goals, and we were playing makeshift midfields and putting youth team players in the team and stuff like that, and we went down because of the injury crisis. So that's always in the back of my mind. If sometimes you can't control that.
And finally, just kind of covered it really. Yeah, how optimistic are you for the season ahead? Very presumably.
Yeah, very. We're coming again. We're coming again for promotion.
Great stuff. Mem, thanks so much for joining us. What can people expect if they subscribe to the BeesPod for next season?
Well, they should get the. I would suggest that there is a Unfortunate 11. I think it's going to be posted over the summer. Unfortunate 11 is basically our way of saying the worst 11, but we just wanted to not be as nasty. But it was it goes hand in hand with our earlier in the season. If people look for it, is our best 11. We have lots of caveats and we have like a draft system going on, so we can't pick the same players. It's quite a funny podcast. We've had a few ones. We've got some quizzes that I think have been posted up. We've got a Dean Brennan interview, hopefully at some point. Just got to pin him down for a date. And then it's just we're now part of the Talk Sport fan network, so we are going to try and do at least a couple of podcasts a month. But the problem is I'm a musician, Charlie's an actor, and Ian is heavily involved in Bring Barnet Back. So the 3 of us are. I'm currently recording an album for my band, and
oh, nice.
Charlie's.
What's your band called? What's the album?
So my band's called Forwarders. We're quite a new band, but we haven't titled the album yet. It'll be out in 2026. So during the second half, during the second half of the season. So I've been working on that really, and Charlie's an actor. So he never knows what's coming up around the corner. Ian is a teacher, but he also is heavily involved in some of the kind of behind the scenes campaign stuff. So he's one of the leaders of the Bring Barnet Back campaign. So it's part of the reason why if you go on BeesPod for this season, we've been very quiet. It's because we've all been working on the campaign, and also we've all been really busy with other stuff. So if you don't hear from us for a little while, go and listen to the B Brief, because the B Brief are a younger crowd, and they try and do this weekly, so they're quite a good listen as well. So I'll plug them as well.
Yeah, kind of you to plug another podcast. Nice. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us, Mem. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much to you guys for watching at home. Look forward to watching Barnet this season. It's certainly going to be an exciting campaign. Get subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. That would help us out a lot. And we'll see you again for another Summer Deep Dive very soon.